there's that saying, like, when people show you who they are, believe them.
I think what I see in Blackstone is the ability to be a part of a vision. Yeah.
Like, you can say what you want to, but it's like all the other stuff then is more important than your goals.
But at some point, people, to get where they want to get, you have to grow up. So one thing that was not lost on me, because when I first got here, Tony told me that you guys had gone to the Fountain the night before, you know? So obviously I thought back to years back.
Yeah.
Is that a great clip of video where you have your briefcase and I have my all stuff. So it's kind of thinking, great question to ask you is, way back then when you had your, just the sparks or the embers of an idea, this guy that you wanted to be.
Yeah.
But you stayed true to it. Like the guy that was walking through the Fountain Blue in that video over 20 years ago is this guy. Like that guy was supposed to develop into this guy. So what's the common thread, or what is it that you have that most people don't have? Most people look back 20 years ago plus and they go, well, that was my dream back then, but then this happened, this happened, this happened. So why were you able to walk the path?
I mean, yeah. So there's a video that he's got of me where I was like 19, maybe 20, no, maybe 21. I think 21. And I had my briefcase, and I would just walk with it everywhere.
Come down here for like a meeting.
Yeah, and I would just have my briefcase with me like a little kid. I mean, I thought, but it helped me. It helped me to feel like I was a business guy. You know what I mean? It's funny. I think that this is an application, whether it's big or small, regardless of what you're trying to do. Even if you're trying to attain something small or big in your life, I think it's figuring out exactly what that picture is for you, and then just doing, everything every day for many, many weeks, months, and years to be able to get exactly as close as you can to that picture. And so for me, that was, even in my personal life, that was me destroying my marriage because it wasn't what I wanted. Right. And there were a lot of factors that pushed me into that and got me into that situation.
Yeah.
But, because of the family and religious stuff and all this other type of stuff. And so, growing up, Hindu, it was like, oh, you had to marry in the same religion and all this type of stuff. And so you were kind of pigeonholed into doing that. And so at that time, I went against that kind of perfect picture in my mind about what it was that I wanted to have in life. So I thought, oh, well, I can take this, and it's kind of like trying to make mashed potatoes out of strawberries. It's like it doesn't work. Yeah. But I think everybody has that idea. I think everybody has the idea that they can change people and they can change things that shouldn't be into things that they want it to be. People do that every single day in their lives. They try to change things. And so I think for me, it was understanding that the only thing I could change was me. And I couldn't change the other person or people. Even when you're running a business, it's like you have employees, and it's like you would wish that they would be a certain way, but they either are or they're not, right? And so I think for me, at some point, I figured out, I saw the successful people in life, and I saw that they were not trying to do that in any area of their life. They like, I saw very successful people, and I observed them, and I said, the thing I noticed about them is they have the people around them that they want, and they're not on a campaign to try to change the other person, because that's work.
Yeah.
Time, effort,
what you can control,
energy. If anything, they had something that they could work with, and then they would add value on top of that. And so when I saw them do that, that's when it clicked for me. And I think I was probably 28, 29 years old when that clicked for me. And then I was like, okay, I'm doing it completely wrong. Maybe not in every area of my life, but I was doing it. The majority of the time I was doing it incorrectly. I was trying to turn strawberries into mashed potatoes or whatever. And then that's when I said, okay, I'm either gonna accept people for who they are. There's that saying, like, when people show you who they are, believe them.
Yep.
So for me, I just adopted that mentality, and I said, okay, so if I want to have the life that I want to have, I've got to be around people and associate with people that are really who they are and who I want them to be, to help me get to where it is I want to go. So that helped me then kind of say, okay, so if this is the picture of the life I want to have, then I've got to do everything in my power to make sure, getting up every day and working hard and all that stuff, but then also aligning the right people within that framework. And I think that's the skill. That's the art of that. So then it was like, okay, how can I add pieces to that, right? Either whether it was, getting married to Huli, and all that, and then having the right people, even with you guys, it's having the right people around me that I didn't have to then take on a project of trying to change people. That to me is, because that's just a lot of time. And I've noticed that the most successful people on the planet that I've had the privilege of being around, they got some talented people around them, man, like really talented. And then they weren't people that they had to completely change into that person.
You got to keep the main thing the main thing. The main thing can't be working on things that you don't control.
Yeah, when I got with Julia, I was like, hey, like, for example, it's a perfect example because it came up last night. We were talking about it last night because she was on a podcast yesterday, and I accepted her on face value. I'm like, okay, now if I could never change this person and this person could never change, would I accept them exactly how they are? And if the answer to that was yes, then I was all in, right? Because then at that point, you got something to work with, and then you can enhance and
horse, yeah.
you do, man. And I think everybody starts with the wrong horse, and especially with guys, with girls, they want to be Captain Save a Hoe, and they want to try to, save every chick they meet and all this type of stuff. And it's stupid. It's really stupid. Waste of time.
Yeah.
So my question is, I think a lot of people always say, man, if I could go back and tell my 20-year-old version of myself something,
Yeah.
it would be this, and it would change everything. You're successful already. So like, kind of like Richard said, you kept it in front of you, and you were able to have the discipline and the drive to stay,
Yeah.
focused on what you wanted your objective to be personally.
Yeah.
But you still got to have something. So what would that one thing be that you would look back to your 20-year-old self and
Oh, I got a lot, dude. Not something. I got a lot, man. I wish I would have started sooner with having the right people around me. I wish I would have exposed myself to more information. I think, 20 years ago was harder than it is now because of the internet and all that stuff. But if, I make it a point now to read at least 1 to 2 hours a day of different stuff going on in different industries and worlds, and whether it's books or whatever. I try to consume at least 2 hours a day. I want to try to get to 3 hours a day of stuff that I'm consuming, like reading about. And I wish I had done that 20 years ago, because I think you get tunnel vision, and tunnel vision is horrible. And so I wish I had done that, and I wish I had been a lot more braver around getting around successful people. I don't think I was. I mean, I didn't feel like I deserved to be around successful people when I was younger. So I was always intimidated by successful people. So it wasn't until, I don't know, maybe 7 years ago, I felt that
I belong.
Yeah, if that's the word. But then I realized very quickly that successful people just are actually even nicer than normal people.
Yeah.
Or average people per se. Yeah. Most of them, And so for me, I wish I would have done that. So I wish I would have got around more successful people. I wish I would have read more about different industries and different stuff. I wish I would have taken bigger risks than I did, and thought bigger. I don't think people think big enough. And so sometimes I even catch myself now where I'm like, I'm not thinking big enough. I'm not thinking broader enough. I'm thinking small. And so that's something I think everybody should do.
How do you avoid that, for everybody when you're making decisions? How do you avoid that sinking feeling inside of failure? So it's like when you said you want to take more risk, I think everybody can relate to, you see something and you're like, man, I want to do that. And then, but here comes the doubt. Here comes the consequences. Here comes this won't work because of that. All of the negative stuff starts to, just run through your mind. And I think everybody, you have to have that, because if you don't, you'll just blindly go and do crazy things.
Yeah.
How do you avoid that, or turn off that feeling to say, no, I got to push through this. I got to do this.
I don't know. I rarely spend time on that. I don't know what it is, or I don't know. I've never. I mean, I will feel the fear of something like ooh,
yeah. I guess the fear of failure.
Yeah, I don't think it's the fear of failure as much as is the.
I don't think you have that, Gene. You have that. That's one of God's gifts to you. It's kind of like Arnold Schwarzenegger when he used to train and work out. All the other guys were like, I got to do 3 more sets. He was like, 3 more sets is going to get me closer to where I want to get.
Yeah.
You're like,
yeah, I never actually
you don't have that.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't know if this is naive. I don't think that I'm going to fail. Not because I think that I'm overconfident. I just know there's always a solution.
I think
so. I think no matter what it is, there's a solution.
Failure isn't failure when you know that you can overcome it.
Yeah, I'm just like, look, I ain't gonna quit until you shoot me like a dead dog. Yeah. So it's like, you know,
it's your desire.
Yeah.
Your desire outweighs anything else.
Yeah, I always think I'm gonna figure it out.
Your will to win.
Yeah,
it's bigger.
Exceeds anything else.
Yeah, I rarely think about. I've always been able to just block it out and say, okay, this is where I'm gonna go, and I focus on that. Yeah, I could focus on the negative, and I could focus on what could not be, and what'll happen if this or that. But I never am like, oh, okay, so yeah, this is gonna end.
Yeah,
I just don't have that thought. So I just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Like, okay, let's solve one problem and go on to the next one and go on to the next one. I mean, look, eventually, and this is something too that I've observed is eventually, it ends. Like you can't be in loss forever.
Right.
Right.
It's just impossible. At some point, the sun's going to come out.
Right.
And so I think that's what keeps me kind of like, okay, at some point the sun's going to come out. I mean, it can't rain every day. You know what I mean? And most people will quit just because it's rained, and then they quit, and then it's like the next day the sun comes out. So I just don't have that idea. I think it's, you could do it. I think it's a rabbit hole.
Right. Absolutely it is. Wow.
So like when I know one thing about, we've talked about this before, and this is a very crude way to say it, but at some point, people, to get where they want to get, you have to grow up, right? You have to let certain things, but not grow up like with your fun and your love of your friends.
Yeah.
And still have a great time. But you have to, there's certain things that we all know. Okay, if I'm going to get to where I want to go, I've got to leave that back.
Yeah.
I hit it later in my life. You hit it earlier in your life. So part one is, what made that click for you, where you look in the mirror and you go, okay, I know the things I need to do. I know the things I don't do. I know the things I need to change. I either need to do it, or I need to go find out how to do it, but I know I need to do that. Right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, how do you keep, because most people, like, this has been me in my life, I've had drive to get certain things accomplished.
Yeah.
And then when I get them accomplished, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm cool for a little bit.
Yeah.
You hit what you want to accomplish, and it seems to accelerate the next thing you want to do. You never go to cruise control.
No.
So like, one, tell me about like you getting to the point where you're like, okay, on this, I got to grow. How did you click that so fast, where you knew you had to leave bullshit behind, go towards a lot?
I mean, I think that part was easier just because it was my goal more important than everything else, right? So that to me was, okay, you got to decide. Do I want to have my vices? Do I want to chase chicks, or is success for me, creating generational wealth and trying to reach my potential more important than chasing women or chasing drugs and partying and all that other stuff that I see a lot of guys do. And, a lot of times when I'm talking to guys and they're trying to get advice, and they're successful entrepreneurs or whatever, they're like, well, I just, but I have this. I'm like, well, all you're telling me is that's more important than the other thing. Yeah. Like you can say what you want to, but it's like all the other stuff then is more important than your goals, and that's okay. But then just admit it. Right. Just be like, hey, the other stuff is just more important.
The answers in your actions.
Exactly. So yeah, we're not gonna have a therapy session about it. I mean, dude, all you're telling me is that food, women, drugs, partying, being at the club, having the doorman know who you are when you walk in is more important than being known as the top leader in your industry or whatever. So for me, that was really easy. I was like, okay, and I had to clean up things in my own life. I think from a mental, spiritual aspect, I like, okay, why was I entertaining those things? Like that to me was something I wanted to clean up for myself. But I think, picking the goals, okay, this is what is important for me was the main thing. And then I think the second thing with that was trying to reach my potential. So like I'm always trying to reach my potential, and I have this weird way of looking at things. When something happens and is hard or is difficult, I'm like, well, could I do something that was 30% harder? Could I handle something 40% harder? Could I take on more? So I'm always chasing that, and I think that to me is the thing that keeps me uncomfortable, because I'm like, okay, like I feel like even now I'm there are problems that you deal with in life and in business, but those sets of challenges sometimes don't, it's like, imagine if you owned, a dry cleaning business, right? And the problems that you had were, the chemicals didn't show up and those types of things, right? Or whatever, the machine breaks down or something like that. And for some people, maybe like, wow, that's taking up my mental capacity and and all that stuff, right? Like that's my limit, because in no way do I think that, like you're always going to have problems in life, right? You're always going to have problems in business. Like there's no business doesn't have problems. And some business owners, funny enough, they think that the other business owners that are making money and doing stuff have no problems. And it's true. BS, right? It's not true. But I think what I do is I always look and say, okay, well, could I handle something that was 3 times bigger, 4 times bigger, 5 times bigger? And when the answer to that is yes, from a capacity standpoint, that makes sense, right? It's like you're a 210, you're a 220 outlet, but you got 70 coming through, right?
You could do more.
You could do more. And so for me, that's what I'm chasing all the time. And that's why I'm trying to take on more, because I don't feel like I'm there yet. This is just for me. Like maybe somebody from the outside looking in may be like, well, okay, well, that's a lot, but I don't feel like it's there yet. And I think that's why I'm always pushing myself to be uncomfortable, because I'm like, okay, I could handle more than this,
Yeah.
So who's your toughest critic? Like if you're gonna, you said you want to always push yourself, you want to always continue. Everybody's got to do that self-reflection, right? And then decide, okay, oh, I could have handled that better, or I could do that. How do you have that conversation with yourself? What does that look like?
Oh, dude, I'm brutal.
You're like, I could have handled that better. What's that conversation like?
No, it's brutal, dude. I'm the worst critic. I'm the worst critic. I'm the worst absolute critic of myself. Like, not that I invalidate myself, but I mean, sometimes I do, and I shouldn't. But I always look at something that happened and I'm like, man, like I should have caught that. And I'll sometimes go into this blame thing for a few seconds, and I'm like, I pop right out of that, and I'm like, no. That was me. I should have done this. I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I shouldn't have hired this person, or I should have checked behind the person, or I should have done this or that, or if I didn't hit what I wanted to hit. There was always a reason why. So I always try to look for that reason why, and I try to correct myself. And I'm not perfect, but I always take the blame for it for myself. So that's that part is pretty rough for me.
It's got to be. If you really want to be a better version of yourself, every interaction, it's just learning.
It's learning.
It's growing. So no matter how successful you get, you're not going to be perfect. Nobody is. But you never stop learning from those. I'm not even going to call them mistakes. I'll just say experiences.
Yeah.
That's this.
I know all three of us we've been family really for a very long time. What are the characteristics? Like, we have something that not a lot of people have. What do you think the characteristics are, especially for somebody like you, anybody who might hear this? What's the characteristics that like make people stick to people like you who are wanting to do better and be successful?
I think, well, that's an interesting question. So here's what people have to understand, right? So it's funny because I had this conversation the other day with Huli, because when you're doing a lot of stuff, right? Like you guys see, like we have hundreds of employees, and then you got people coming in and out all the time, right? All the time. It's like a revolving door. You got your kind of base camp of people that stay, and then you got like this revolving door of people coming in. And what can happen to people, and this is why I'm telling the story, because you got to try to really go against it, is it can introvert you into thinking that what you're doing is not correct, because you may have somebody that's quote unquote good that comes into your world, your orbit, right? And they're there for a little bit, and then they're not there for a little, and then they're gone, right? For whatever reason, they're gone. You got rid of them, they got rid of themselves, whatever, right? They're gone. And you kind of look at that person, you'd be like, wow, but that person was a good person. Right? They were nice and they were good. And then you're like, hey, well, what am I doing? What am I doing wrong? Now, you can introvert on that pretty hard, to where you start to change the way that you operate in life very easily. Yeah. Because now you're like, hey, well, maybe I'm a little bit too hard on people. Maybe I'm a little too obsessed with this, obsessed with success, obsessed with perfection, or I'm too demanding, or, I'm too lenient, or whatever it may be, right? And so that will introvert you. And the minute that happens, you're screwed. You're screwed. You're done. You're done. Exactly. So what I always do is I take a step back and I say, okay, hold on for a second. What am I doing and where am I going? Right. And if I look at the actuality, if I look at my numbers, I look at my stats, I look at my products, I look at all the things that are happening, I'm like, okay, are those things successful? Are they survival in nature? You know what I mean? Like, what am I trying to create here? And what am I creating? So if I'm trying to create, and I'm creating these a good group of people, and we're helping, and we're doing stuff, and we're helping the community, and the numbers are up, and the company's better and growing and more survival and all that type of stuff. But then you had somebody over here that was supposedly a good person that's no longer part of that. All it means is they just didn't want that. As weird as that may sound, and people will be like, no, but that everybody wants success. It's not true. That's a hard pill to swallow. To think everybody wants success. No, they don't. No, they don't. No, they don't. You could give a bum $100,000 and he'll give all the money away and be a bum again. They've done studies on that. So it's not true, but everyone thinks it's true, right? Everyone thinks that, oh no, but everybody wants successful. No, you had to have done something wrong. No, dude, there are people that just can't have it. They can't have it. No matter what you tell them, no matter what you say, success is like, it's too much. Order is too much. Being disciplined is too much. Having goals and being obsessed with them is too much. No, you got to have balance, and you have to give a little. No, fuck that. There's no balance. I don't have no balance in my life. There's weeks where I barely see my kids. There's no balance. There's no balance. Like, I'll see my kids for 30 minutes in the morning, and I don't see them until the next day sometimes, because that's what the organization requires, right? That we've created and what's been built. That's what it takes. So you can't introvert on this stuff, which is like, oh, but hold on, now you start changing everything, and then you got to start being a little different, and then your friend or your partner tells, well, I think you should just be nicer and this and that or whatever. But hold on, but look at the numbers.
Okay, so that leads to another thought, right? So kind of balancing that off the other ideas. When do you say, okay, when do you just for you? Because to me, this is a huge skill. So what you just said, when do you go, okay, Vic, this is an adjustment I want to make? You know what I mean? For you, like when not necessarily, when do you adjust and say, okay, this is something I want to adjust or make better about myself? Or how do you balance that?
I mean, I'm doing it. I'm doing it every day. I'm doing it every day, man. I mean, the minute I see something that's not going the way that I want it to go,
that's it.
I'm adjusting it every day. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, about 3-4 years ago, I felt and I could see that I had a weakness in accounting. Okay. I had a weakness in accounting, meaning when I say weakness, I didn't understand the full scope of all of it, right? From the liability perspective, from a balance sheet perspective, from a P&L perspective, from a cash flow statement perspective, and all this type of stuff, and how banks look at things, and how everybody looks at things holistically. So I then took it upon myself to meet with, my CPA, like every week, every other week. And I would pay them for an hour or two of their time. And I would literally go through line by line on a balance sheet. So, okay, what does this mean? What does that mean? What does this mean? What does that mean? Then I would get on YouTube and I would watch videos for hours about balance sheets and profit and loss statements and all this stuff, educate myself exactly what was retained earnings and why is retained earnings important, and all this stuff that, that nobody really teaches you, right?
In school.
I mean, it's not that they don't teach you in school, but who's teaching you in school? A professor that's never run a business, that's never went out and had to get a business loan. I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm not listening to his viewpoint of a balance sheet. I want to talk to, what I did was I went and talked to, and I hired like ex-bank presidents that were now consultants. And I said, hey, explain to me, if I come in and see you, and this is what these numbers are, what are you then thinking? What does this mean to you? Whole different ballgame. Whole different strategy. And that's what I did. And I started doing that, several years ago. And what it did was it allowed me to change my balance. Like I was able to clean up my chart of accounts and clean up my balance sheets. And I got all my financials reviewed, and everything was completely like perfect. Right. And once I did that, then my bankability as a business went through the roof, because everything was like from the viewpoint of, well, what's a president of a bank? How's he or she going to look at that? Right. And so that's what I did. But I'm doing that all the time. Like when I notice that something's not optimal, I'm digging into it, as opposed to kind of like, okay, well, it'll fix itself and all that type of stuff. That's sometimes what a lot of entrepreneurs try to do, is they try to think it'll just fix itself. It doesn't fix itself. So you got to really dig into it. And that wasn't, and I love numbers and I love math. So it wasn't something I shied away from, but it was a learning curve. It was a learning curve, because I was on the phone with CPAs and accountants, and they would say things and make comments and use words. I didn't know what it meant. you know, so I had to really dive in and understand. And it got to a point where I started correcting some of them. I'm like, well, you know, the difference between a contingent liability and a long-term liability. And they were like, oh, well, this is that. I'm like, no, that's not actually what it means per the definition, you know? So I would dig into it, and that definitely made a big shift.
I've seen him do that a lot. When you're wait, well, you'll slow down the train. You'll say, well, I've seen you correct several things in our business that way, like where you go, what does that actually mean? What's that actually saying?
Yeah.
That's a great thing that I've learned.
Well, because I think most people aren't, I don't know, you know, I think it's a cultural thing. I think people are afraid to ask questions about simple things
Yes, exactly.
in meetings.
That's
So
it.
somebody's in a meeting and they say something, and supposedly everybody knows,
Right.
right? And it's like a culturally accepted thing that everybody should know it, but you don't know it. And I'm the first guy. I trained myself to just be like, no, I'm going to ask you. So a lot of times in a meeting, and funny enough, I've been in meetings where whether it was with attorneys or accountants or other professionals, and even in healthcare professionals, doctors, whatever, and I'll say, hey, well, what does that mean? Because they'll say, oh, this is an acronym of AGF.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what does AGF mean? They don't know.
Acronyms.
They don't know. They don't know. They don't know what the words mean. They don't know what the acronyms mean. And they may have a definition of something, but it's sometimes wrong. And so I think people need to, you know, I've taken it upon myself to, when I'm in a meeting and we're talking about basics, like if I don't understand the basics of it, I'm not going to understand it on a complicated level. So I think the foundation of the knowledge has got to really be in there. That's why I went back to accounting. I was like, okay, what's a balance sheet? What's the difference between a cash flow statement and an income statement?
Right.
If you don't know those differences, then you're going to be in conversations that people are going to run circles around you because you don't understand what the basic fundamentals of it is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Wow.
I think one of the great things for me is because before I came to work for you,
Yeah.
I was in bars and nightclubs, and I loved that life for a long time. But you know, a lot of times when you're working in that environment, you're making money, but kind of like what you said when you go to a bank. On paper, you're not the greatest citizen.
You're not bankable.
Yeah,
You're not bankable
at all.
Uh-uh.
You know, you got 50 grand cash stuffed under your mattress, but you can't really do a whole lot with it. So
Yeah.
coming to work for you, that changed for me. Now I look like a champ on paper, and this job has given me that, and it's allowed me to make bigger purchases, to create a better life for my family, my wife, all that stuff. How do you make that move? I know for me, I reached a point of frustration. But as far as the outside world, what's a good trigger for them to realize they may be doing something that makes them money, puts cash in their pocket, but it's limiting.
I think the problem with people is they're chasing money, right? And they're not chasing value and proximity. They're completely two different things. Like you'll get somebody, like I know people that have a great job, but there's no proximity there. And what I mean proximity is you're going to become more. You're the average of the 7 people you're around. You're the average. So the only way that you're going to be successful. When I say successful, I don't necessarily mean just money. I'm talking about relationships. I'm talking about, the benefits of getting the right advice, right? All of these things add up to it outside of just money. And so if you were a guy and you were like, hey, I'm going to make, $50,000 a year, but I'm working for a guy that's worth a couple of $100 million and he's trying to create something big, isn't that better proximity than just taking a job that's making you 60 grand a year? But there's no real proximity. You're just kind of another number.
There's no next floor.
There's no opportunity. There's no opportunity. It's like the guy that's, there was a guy, I saw an interview of this guy, and he was like, he worked for a billionaire. Okay. And he worked for a billionaire for 10 years. And then when he left, he was broke. How are you broke working for a billionaire?
Yeah.
Like what opportunity did you miss? Like you're a ding dong, right? You're a ding dong. It's impossible to be around somebody successful and be broke. Broke mentally, broke spiritually, broke financially. This is impossible, dude. It's impossible. It's like saying, and somehow this guy pulled it off. Like you're broke. How did it, like crumbs? Like success leaves crumbs. It leaves clues. It leaves opportunities. So to me, that's what people should be chasing. Right. And I think that's the difference that we offer here versus in a lot of other companies. Right. That's why people want to go work for the Apple. And they want to go work for the Tesla. And they want to go work because there's opportunities there because of the proximity, as opposed to going to work for, Kellogg's, or Nestle Crunch or something like, you know what I mean? So I think people miss that, and that's why I've always chased that value, and that relationship to me is way more valuable than the dollar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I see in Blackstone is the ability to be a part of a vision,
Yeah.
and that doesn't have a price
No.
associated with it. It's priceless.
Yeah.
Be able to be a part of something that has a vision that you can then, because of the proximity, then attach yourself and then become part of that vision.
Right.
And then you just pull other people with you. You're just constantly pulling other people with you. So for
Yeah.
everybody that's willing to stick it out, that's willing to take that chance and say, you know what, I'm not going to take this potentially higher paying job right now. I have the vision. I can see ahead and see that in the future, this is where I want to be because of the proximity, because of the direction. That's what I see.
Yeah.
Blackstone.
Yeah. And most people don't have that vision. They don't have that ability to think ahead, and so they're just chasing the dollar, and they end up being a slave to the dollar.
There you go.
What people don't understand is that successful people need help because they're trying to blaze a path that hasn't really been blazed before. So if you're trying to blaze a trail, what do you need around you?
People who are willing to go to war.
People are willing to go to war, and then are those people going to get rewarded? Whether it's money, whether it's relationships, whether it's opportunities, whether it's experiences,
Knowledge.
it's knowledge. I mean, it doesn't end. It doesn't end. So most people don't have that ability to see that. So, what am I getting paid?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and usually when people come in with that mentality, they usually burn the bridge quickly and eventually anyway.
Yeah, because it's all what's in it for me.
100%.
It's all what's in it for me, man.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I know very successful guys. I know one guy's a friend of mine. He gave away, I think, $12 million in a day to his team. $12 million in a day, and I've seen that over and over again. People that stuck by him and went through all the stuff. He was handing out $1 million, $2 million checks, cars, watches.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that law firm in Florida. You might remember the name. I think a long time ago. What's the big law firm? I won't.
Morgan & Morgan?
Morgan & Morgan. One of his buddies invested a long time ago, and then when they sold out, he handed them a check for $20 million or so because they'd grown so much or whatever. Yeah, that's true. It does happen.
It happened. So I'm sure somebody missed out on that.
Exactly.
Right, because they were chasing the dollar. And the smart ones, and I actually know from actually knowing the people, the one kid was basically just like, hey, I'm just going to stick with you, and stuck with the entrepreneur. And when the entrepreneur made it big, the kid's now a multimillionaire.
So going back, and that kind of circles back to me, for all of us, like loyalty does matter.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. In life and friendships.
Yeah. Absolutely.